Hello, how are you all? Good morning. It's 8 o'clock. Today is June 10th, and it's almost halfway through the year. Can you believe it? We're almost halfway through 2020. Wow, that's eye-opening right now for me. It feels a little bit blurry. Hi, Gail. It feels blurry to be at this point in this year, and it's just been quite a year. So how are you all? I'm so glad I could get up and be on at 8 o'clock at our normal time so that I hopefully can see more of you. Let me know if you're on. Um, Sorry for the up and down times in the last few weeks and the interruptions all through yesterday's post. But I think we're good for now in the morning at 8. Um, So yeah, thank you again for hanging in there. Good morning, Christine. Hi. So much going on, right? Um, every time we go back into this scripture in Genesis, I feel like the Lord has something that's really pertinent for us today. And it's just amazing how he keeps doing that. So I'm excited that we can read together. You can see I'm still in my pajamas. Excuse me. But I do have coffee, and I just made it, and it's from Phoebe's. This is Phoebe's cup to me. Mom life is the best life. I wish you all were here and we could go for a bike ride like this on this bike. I really am thankful for where we live. I'm thankful for. It is such a small town, though. It feels like with COVID, there's been hardly anywhere to go. But it does force you out into nature, which I'm so grateful that we have nature all around us and beauty. Oh, spectacular beauty. So, yay, yay for life right now. All right, we'll get started here. We're 3 minutes into 8 o'clock, and so we need to get started. All right, we have just finished reading about Joseph being thrown into the pit by his brothers. And do you remember, if you were on here yesterday, that the whole devotional was about being faithful and receiving God's favor, even when you're in the trial, being faithful. So if you haven't heard that, you want to go back and listen to that because that's the first. We just started learning about Joseph, and I'm telling you, this whole last part of Genesis is just going to be like so cool with the story of Joseph. And all along, it's so funny. I've been thinking I want to watch that movie, Joseph and the Technicolor Coat or whatever it is. Did any of you ever watch that? I just want to get my feel for this story even more. So I'm so thankful for the Passion Translation too. It really sheds such beautiful light on the scriptures. Today we're starting in verse 25. And so where we come is the brothers are going to be eating their lunch while Joseph is screaming for help in a pit nearby, and they can all hear him and they're ignoring him. And that's kind of the picture of our world right now. I don't think people are ignoring the screams and the cries for help. There might be some indifference happening. There might be some hearts that are hardened towards the cries, the outcries right now. There might be misunderstanding, but still a picture of someone being thrown into a pit by their own brothers sort of caught my attention. Um, yeah, so let's talk about that today. Afterward, the brothers sat down to eat their food, and when they looked up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants coming from Gilead on their way to Egypt. They had many camels loaded with myrrh, spices, and perfumes. Judah spoke up, and he said to his brothers, "What will we gain by murdering our brother and covering up his blood?" That was their plan so far. Then these guys come along and he says, "I have an idea. Let's sell Joseph to these Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him, for he is our brother and our flesh and blood." Okay, so hi Melissa, I see you on here, and Gail and Christine. All right, wonderful. So his brothers agreed. Judah must have had a strong voice. And when the Midianites, also known as the Ishmaelites, came by, Joseph's brother lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And the merchants took Joseph far away to Egypt. Far away they took him, probably chained up. Just imagine yourself, all 11 of your brothers just, basically gave a piece of silver or two from, what they had, sold you, you're shackled on some camel or walking or who knows how, and off you go to Egypt. Yesterday we talked about how in the midst of all this adverse suffering, Joseph kept believing God and kept acting uprightly. I just think, put yourself in that situation and what would your response have been? Anger, throwing a fit, feeling deserted? I know for me, I would have felt my thing I go to is abandonment. I have struggled with abandonment. And so I'm sure that would have just been like in the sky over me, trying to push me into not believing God and not living in his presence. That's what it does. That's wherever, if you would have gone to rejection, if you would have gone to hatred, if you would have gone, whatever the enemy is trying to offer, when you're all shackled up and leaving your supposed kin, blood brothers. Later, Reuben went to the pit and saw that Joseph was gone. So Reuben wasn't even around. He didn't see this happen, so maybe it wasn't 11 brothers, maybe 10 of them were around. I don't know, but Reuben wasn't there, and he's the one that had the heart for Joseph. He was overcome with grief and tore his clothes. He went to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone. What am I going to do now?" So he was just beside himself. He's like, "What have you done, you guys? This can't be. You can't tell me that our youngest brother is gone." Then they took Joseph's colorful robe. They killed a goat and dipped the robe in its blood. They took the blood-stained robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Look it over. Doesn't it belong to your son?" Jacob recognized it instantly and cried out, "It's my son's robe. Some wild animal must have killed him. My son Joseph has been torn to pieces." Overcome with grief, Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son for a very long time. All of his sons and daughters came and tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. He told them, "No, I will mourn for him the rest of my life." until I joined my son in the realm of the dead. Joseph's father wept and wept for his son. Meanwhile, the Midianites took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. And that's the end of chapter 37. So today we're just going to talk about this portion. And in the book, up here is the scripture, and then down here are the notes that Brian Simmons writes regarding each of the verses. And sometimes I just feel like, obviously reading some of these to you, I think that they're important. And so today, what I will bring out, and this is nothing of me, this is something that you could read in this book for yourself too, um, was the callous indifference that is seen here by his brothers when they're having their lunch and he's crying for help. They sat near the well, eating a meal. No doubt they were within earshot of Joseph's cries, asking them for help. Um, so that is the scene of what we see in so many situations. I just want to say, let that land where the Holy Spirit wants it to land for you. Because we hear in all of our living situations and different places that we reside, we hear the cry of our brother somewhere. We see the cry of our brother. I almost get overwhelmed just driving through town, just to be honest. And uh, I overheard a man and a woman arguing with a young child nearby, and I was fighting tears because I knew that somehow that environment was affecting that child. So that's what I mean. You can hear and see things all over if you're aware. And the good thing is that you can exercise your voice, you can step in, you can pray also. There's many things you can do. You can provide for the person that's crying out for water or for food or whatever you see. So just to let that land so that we aren't indifferent, that would be really good just to check our hearts. And then about the 20 silver shekels, that was the price in that day and time for a slave. A male slave was 20 shekels. That's what you paid for another person's life. And that, of course, brings us to our day and time now and what's happening with the uprising and the cry of the Black or African American populace and their experience, excuse me, and 20 shekels of silver for another person's life. This, yeah. I will say some other things about this in a moment, but let me just read this to you. Isn't it amazing? Okay, so they're devaluing their brother, which is what I put in the title of this devotion. But God has a redemption, which is what I want to keep honoring here and bringing out that God's redemption plan is still going to happen. And so, even though the plight of our brothers and sisters um, looks grim and we see people crying out for help, there is a redemption that God has for them and for us. And He is um, ever present and He understands everything that's going on. Nothing is going on that He doesn't know about. So here is here's what he writes. Isn't it amazing that the Lord sent the merchants from Midian at just the right time? So he's saying that the Lord sent those um, merchants. He wanted to save Joseph's life. So he sent the Midianite merchants And he says here, the Lord has ways to deliver us that are beyond our comprehension. The Lord has Midianite merchants to send to us to deliver us at just the right time out of our pit. He knows how to distract those that are holding or shackling us, those who have thrown us into the pit. He knows how to put another idea or pop another idea in their mind of, oh, we could be making money rather than killing him. You might say Joseph started at the bottom and worked his way up. It is ridiculous to even try and figure out how God will pull all of this off. He just will. He just does. He just can be trusted. Judas sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, and Judas, which is also another form of Judah, sold Jesus in the New Testament for 30 pieces of silver. That's in Matthew 26. Whenever we devalue another person, we're actually selling that person. We're shortchanging them. That's where that comes from. Failing to understand one's true value. We're failing to understand each other's true value. How could a life be sold for mere silver? If Joseph's brothers had valued him as a sheaf or a star, as he had talked to them about from his dreams, they would not have sold him. So they had devalued him. They weren't going to have a brother who was a sheaf or a star, nor were they going to even recognize that for themselves, that they too were included in the dream as sheaves and stars. No, were going to devalue their brother. And so let's remember this. Let's gain some insight for today in our relationships with people and people groups and cultures. And yes, Gail, same for our country, redemption, yes. Okay, so then I wanted to tell you that when um, Jacob, Israel, found out about what had happened to his son Joseph, he was overcome with grief, and he mourned for a long, long time, and he said that he would mourn till the day that he died. And being a person who has endured a lot of grief and mourning for a loved one, this really gave me a lot more understanding about how grief works for different people, and everyone's, different, and how they handle the death of a loved one. And I just have been listening to some podcasts recently on grief. Um, and one thing that this woman said was that to grieve for as long as you need to, and not to let the experts tell you that at 2 years you should be done. And um, otherwise, you're denying your emotions, and it really gets, you're the one that's going to have to deal with that after the 2 year mark. And I really think that we need to be more kind to people who have lost a child or lost someone who is, part of their, especially a part of their immediate family, um, because, yeah, we can see here how Jacob was just riddled with grief and didn't even really know how he was going to survive or get over it. And so many times we think, you know, we think you should be over it by now. And that is not the heart of the Lord. He understands the depth of our grief. And so he understood here, I'm sure, that Jacob truly believed that he'd lost his son. Of course, in a few chapters, we're going to find out that that wasn't true. And my goodness, isn't that wonderful? So, the only other thing I wanted to point out here was in the last verse, they talk about where Joseph was taken. And you know, he was taken all the way to Egypt, a long way away, and he was sold to Potiphar of all people. This again is an insertion of God's plan for Joseph. He was raising him up, you know, to help the entire nation. That was what his plan was. So he inserted him as a slave to Potiphar. I mean, he could have been anywhere, and he was given to Potiphar. And Potiphar is the chief executioner for the Pharaoh. He was the warden over the Egyptian penal system, and he was perhaps the chief steward over Pharaoh's affairs. He was amazingly powerful in Egypt, and Joseph got to be near him. Even though he was a slave, God inserted him into that household. Um, yes, thank you, Christine. Yeah, space and time. Good, that's good. So, you know, here he was at the beginning of this chapter in a pit, and even before that, they were contemplating murdering him. And now he's in the household of Potiphar. He's alive, he's far away from his family, and he's trusting God. And God is using Joseph already. I mean, he's setting him up. You know, I think he trusted Joseph to put him in Potiphar's household. I think he already knew what kind of young man he was, that he could be trusted. It really matters what we do in secret and when no one's looking. It really matters how we um, garnish or take care of our thoughts, our thought life, our reactions and responses, our moods, emotions, everything that we don't want to control us. Um, there's just, there's a God who sees, and you might be in a pit. You might be sold to slavery right now. You might be being mistreated right now. And God is looking at your heart and seeing if He can trust you with what He's leading you to. Maybe He's leading you to honor Him in a great revival that's coming. Maybe He's setting you up because of the way you're living your life right now to bring redemption to a family or a neighborhood or a city. He knows what He's doing. He will send the merchants, the Midianite merchants, at just the right time, and then He'll give them the idea that they think is their own to take you into Pharaoh's household, into Potiphar's household, where there is great authority. Isn't that great? Okay, if you want to say something, now's your chance. If you would like to comment, or if you come on here afterwards and you want to comment, all of us will see it. It'll pop up on our timeline or on our notifications, and we'd love to hear from you. And I'm so happy that we got to be reminded of how big God is today. All right. Have a good day. I guess that's it. All right. Bye. Have a good day. Love you.